hope I'm not going to be irreverent here, Your Excellency, but I'm going to ask you a question directly, coming from some of your critics, who say you've achieved international recognition for speaking out against people like Klaus Schwab and the Great Reset, Build Back Better, and so forth. What do you say to your critics, Your Excellency, who argue that you are dabbling in mere conspiracy theories, that you're a rabble-rouser, and that you should just say your prayers and keep silent?
I say my prayers anyway. Successor of the apostle, keeping silence on issues that are closely connected and complementary. As long as my criticism were directed against the cover-up of the scandals of the former Cardinal Mechanic, or the doctrinal deviation of Vatican II, the level of lefebvrism was enough to demonize me before the faithful. But since I pointed out the coherence between the global coup carried out by the deep state with the pandemic emergency first, and now with the energy emergency, and the no less subversive act of the election of Bergoglio organized by the deep church, it was no surprise that the level of conspiracy theorists also have been added in order to discredit me with people who listen to my words. The risk, according to them, is the same. There is someone who has begun to reason independently and who understands that we have been the victim of a colossal fraud to the detriment of our material life, through the Davos agenda, and to the detriment of our spiritual life with Vatican II and Bergoglio agenda. I would also like to understand why the subversive plan of the supranational private organization, the mafia organized and rooted in the nerve center of power, which are announced by their own proponents well in advance, and which represent the fulfillments of the dystopian delusions of the Masonic sect, should be dismissed as conspiracy theories. If the mafia publicly declares that he wants to exterminate part of the population, if I see it organizing itself to do so, and I witness the implementation of this extermination project exactly as announced, it is not I who invent conspiracy theories, but the mafia that feels so sure of its success that it has not even had to hide it. Indeed, assuming that if we convince ourselves, consider us inferior, that our extermination is desirable and good. In fact, the same is happening with the green ideology of the new Malthusian matrix, which considers the human being as a parasite of the planet. The decisions taken by the United Nations, the European Union, and individual government are based on the false pretense of global warming to legitimize decarbonization and the forced introduction of so-called sustainable energy. But this is precisely a lie, an excuse to force the masses to submit to total control and to guarantee the elite disproportionate power and gain. And if we think about it, even the proponents of Vatican II Council stated that they were updating the church as a false pretext, when the unmentionable purpose was instead its destruction. deep state and deep church are two sides of the same false coin, because they both respond to the same infernal mind that hates God, both in the creation and in redemption, and that is unleashed both against the life of the body and against the life of the soul. The system, despite its satanic delirium, has proven to work as long as people remain isolated and abandoned to their own devices. Conversely, the awareness of not being alone and of sharing the same vision of the world and the same faith opens the eyes of many and gives them courage and strength to resist, publicly revealing the deception and uniting the resistant. This is true in the civil sphere as well in the ecclesial sphere. It is no coincidence that the pandemic fast has brought together deep state and deep church in a surreal and criminal narrative that has scandalized citizen and faithful. So, if there is plenty of conspiracy, why should I be silent? And if there is no conspiracy, why do they care so much about the words of an elderly archbishop?